typical cat scratching post simply does not fit into the style of the living room. I myself like my living room to look good. Not super fancy, just reasonably good. And my cats like hanging out in the living room. And I have to say, many times sitting on furniture they shouldn't be on at all. The living room is also in between the upstairs and the kitchen. And so they cross it multiple times a day, which makes it a prime spot for scratching, and I want to keep them away from my sofa and not to have that scratched. So it needs a cat scratching post, but the typical cat scratching post simply does not fit in. Doesn't matter where I put it, it just doesn't fit into the style of the living room. So I came up with a solution. My name is Francisco, and on this channel I work with my 3 cats, Calypso, Skyfall, and Mr. Muffin, to help you improve the lives of your indoor cats. Now this video is not just for them, it's also for me and for any one of you who is interested in how to make your living room look a little bit better if you have cats. So a couple of years ago I made my own scratching post that I thought would work. I simply wrapped some sisal rope around the 2x4, I put a footer on it, then a header on it, then I screwed it to the wall. And for a while it worked great, especially with this little sculpture that I put on top of it. Most people who came by didn't even realize it was a cat scratching post, which was exactly what I wanted. But over time it got worn down, started looking ragged, and now has needed replacement for several months, which I've been putting off. Look how much the cats have used it. Let me point out that in this one, the most worn out spot is between 34 and 37 inches off the floor. This will give you some idea of how tall a cat scratching post needs to be to provide the most satisfaction. A good cat scratching post will be stable because cats will hesitate to scratch anything that feels like it might fall on them. It should also be tall enough because if it's too short, they won't be able to stretch and it won't be very satisfying. It should also be in a high traffic area, somewhere that they go by all the time. Cats are opportunists. They use what is nearby. They are also making marks and putting their scent on things. They don't want their scent off in some corner. They want it where you will notice it. But I've been postponing replacing this because in order to replace it, I would have to make a whole new one. So I built a new one that allowed me to replace the rope section without having to replace everything. I also chose to make the main structure out of oak to make it look a little bit better. The main post is screwed into the wall, making it super stable. Now the rope panel is only sisal rope wrapped around and glued on a piece of knotty pine. And I can replace the panel without replacing the whole thing. It can be turned upside down or flipped as different sections wear out, allowing it to be effective for longer periods of time. It's held in place by these panels that I screw on top. Now this top section has a second piece so that I can switch out anything decorative that I put on top of it. In this case, I'm putting the same little sculpture on top. It did take a lot of measuring, cutting, gluing, sealing to make this post, but I think it looks great. It gives the cats somewhere they can scratch in a place they will like, and will in the long run save me money from buying expensive posts that do not look very good. There is a downside, which is that sometimes the cats reach around when they're scratching, which means that they scratch the wall. So eventually I'm going to have to repaint it. Now, I know that most of you are not DIY people. So making something like this would be very difficult simply because you don't have the room or the tools to do it. But it's also possible to make something very similar, simply by wrapping and gluing sisal rope around the board. You'll also want to separate the post from the wall so that your cats don't scratch it. Now this video doesn't cover everything that you'll need to know about cat scratching posts. I have another one that does that, which I will link somewhere around here.